Morning, everybody. My name is Martin Scherber. I'm from Deconium, working on updating industries and societies to build more desirable futures. And I'm pretty happy and honored to be invited to host and moderate this beautiful panel in the morning about the future of fashion. So let me introduce quickly who is with me on this panel. So I start from the middle. There is Julia Bösch. Yeah, Julia co-founded the company Outfittery 12 years ago. Today, they are market leader in online personal shopping and serve over 1 million customers in a total of 10 European markets. Before that, she led international business development at Zalando and holds an MBA from Columbia. Welcome, Julia. Then to the very left of mine, there is Jaime Gomez. Jaime is founder of Lux, a Merantix portfolio company that uses generative AI to help consumers to make better purchase decisions with immersive experiences in the fashion and cosmetic industries. Before that, before Lux, Jaime worked as senior venture architect at Deloitte Consulting in Germany, building startups for corporate clients across Europe. Very welcome to Jaime. And next to me, good morning, Kathy Gromotka. Kathy is an investor for H&M Ventures, where she invests globally from seed to growth across the 3 strategic investment areas: sustainable fashion, new retail, and enablers and services. Before joining H&M, Kathy was principal at Downing Ventures after a career at Bloomberg Sales and Product Development. Kathy holds an MBA from Oxford University. A very warm welcome to Kathy. Thank you for being with us. So we have a breakfast here. We will eat and drink and connect the dots and speak with each other. To be better able to do this, let me check with you who made the way to the campus today to see who should and want to connect to each other. Just raise your hand. Who is a founder in this round? Just look at each other that you find. Thank you. Who is thinking of founding something on that space? Okay, maybe we can change that, right? Who works for fashion directly? All right. And who is a pure tech aficionado? Cool. Very good. And who's an investor? Cool. Super. So hopefully you remind who is going to touch base with whom in this little round. So I'm a pretty bad time boxer in this kind of thing. So maybe someone can give us a sign when we exceed this 45 minutes we have been given. So I'm just starting on with introducing yourselves. Kathy, can you briefly introduce yourselves and share your journey in the field of fashion?
Just go up. There we go. Yeah. So I joined H&M's venture investment team in October 2022, and most people in the room probably have the reaction I get a lot, which is, I didn't know H&M had a venture investment team. We're relatively small, and to be fair, most of my colleagues sit in Stockholm. There's only 2 of us here in Berlin, but we do invest globally. And I worked at a fund in London where I invested in a company called A-Day. It's a women's apparel brand. A mutual friend of ours co-founded the company. And there I sat on a board with Nana Anderson, who started H&M's venture investment team. We got to know each other really well, and I really liked how just the resources she was able to unlock for A-Day as a strategic investor. And so when I left the UK and left Downing, Nana asked if I wanted to join her team. And I said, I know, besides my investment in A-Day and obviously tracking the company over 2 years, I knew very little about fashion. Still, I would say probably know very little about fashion, which is the great irony when people say, oh, you work in fashion. But I've learned a lot about production and different operating models across fashion, you know, Outfittery obviously being very, very different to how we operate at H&M. So there's a lot to learn, and it's a super, super fascinating industry. But I'm still new to it. I only joined officially in October 2022.
Super, thank you. Julia, what made your way to be where you are today?
So I had this dream to become an entrepreneur. And then after university, I would have loved to found my own company, but I didn't know exactly what and with whom. So I decided to join a small startup, which back then was a 40 people team selling shoes online. Today, that is Zalando. So I was really lucky to join them in the very early days and was part of a complete explosion over the following 2 years. But I wanted to found my own company, right? So I met my co-founder Anna in working for Zalando, and we during a trip to New York really had this epiphany of what we want to do. And this was our friend Philip, who is, I would say, the average guy who wants to be like, who loves to be well dressed at night in the clubs, but he didn't want to go through the pain of going shopping. So he hired a personal shopper in New York. And this experience was really this light bulb moment, because he looked fantastic after the experience, and he actually had a big smile on his face. So he enjoyed that a lot. And it is a luxury experience. So it costs like $200 per hour to have a personal shopper. So my co-founder and I thought, how can we turn this luxury personal shopper experience into something that we can make available to anybody? And this is what we're doing with OUTFITTERY. So today we're serving 1 million clients with a personal shopping service that is for free. Which is only possible through the combination of our human personal stylists and our technology. And that's how I got here.
Thank you. Jaime, tell me.
So I'm from Venezuela, as some people here know. And like you, Julia, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, had my projects going on, but then moved to Europe. So that transition into founding a company in a new country is not straightforward. So I joined a venture builder at Deloitte Consulting, with basically building startups for their corporate clients. And that kind of like fueled also my desire to build my own company. And eventually, after a few years there, I couldn't take it any longer and I had to jump ship. And that's luckily, you know, and thanks to, I don't know, the magic of time, I met the people here at Merantix, and I spent 1 year ideating with them, going through many different areas and industries, and ended up with one that I really love, thankfully, and one that I have not really embraced before. I knew I loved fashion. It is an important part of my day, every day, usually a difficult part of my day. And so, yeah, we went through many iterations with the same objective of making e-commerce more immersive and, you know, different from a static catalog, how it has been for almost 2 decades. And yeah, we founded Looks with that mission. We started with cosmetics, created an augmented reality app for contouring, and then pivoted into making fashion more immersive with virtual try-ons and thanks to generative AI, really, because what happened last year made us rethink many of our approaches to find a more efficient way to achieve the same dream.
Thank you very much. So what we see, neither you nor all of you is trying to shape the future by looking into the back mirror. So we all look for the things which are a bit behind the curve, and this is beautiful. And that's the reason why having such kind of breakfast is a kind of beautiful opportunity. And when we look at the current landscape of fashion, Julia, how do you perceive the current state of the European fashion industry?
I think right now it's incredibly difficult, to be honest, the fashion industry, because on the one hand side, from a consumer perspective, over the last 2 years, really, the fashion wallet has really been compressed. Consumers are still spending a lot for travel and experiences, and that is kind of taking from the fashion wallet as well. And then there is a new challenger on the block, which is Shein and Temu. So these Chinese platforms that are kind of flooding the market with very cheap and affordable garments. And they have now overtaken Zalando, H&M, and recently even Zara in terms of size. So that is making everybody rethink what their strategy for the future is. And now you could say, oh, that's awful. But as an entrepreneur, I think that's amazing because this means the industry is really, again, being disrupted. And that's what's so beautiful about the fashion industry. It's ever changing. Yeah, it makes it really interesting to look for those opportunities in this current landscape.
Perfect. Kathy, you're right in the center of it.
Yeah, we are. And it's, I mean, it's an interesting debate that we have as well. Obviously, we make a lot of investments in sustainability, and there's always a tug of war between wanting to live up to H&M's original mission, which is to democratize fashion. And it sounds almost absurd to think about it, but you know, when H&M was founded 70 years ago, fashion as we know it today and the freedom to choose what we're wearing right now really wasn't that accessible to mass market. So the idea of lowering prices and having a constant churn of new styles at affordable prices coming out really was revolutionary. And it's sometimes difficult even for me to imagine that that is something that's revolutionary. And now we're looking at operating models like Shein, who are going directly from factory to consumer, cutting out a lot of the stuff that, you know, eats into our margins. And we think, oh, wow, of course we want that. But then we're also consciously stop trying to avoid driving overconsumption. So where do we land on that spectrum? It's a debate, frankly, we have as a team on a regular basis. We see a lot of companies pitching us saying, here's software that enables you to operate like Shein. And we do have to ask ourselves, is that the direction that we want to move into? Open discussion. You know, we haven't made an investment in the space yet, but of course we are looking at ways to be faster and to keep up. And nearshoring, which means essentially moving out of Southeast Asia or East Asia into closer countries for more of our production is the direction that we are on and have been on along other retailers. But that in no way will make us be able to keep up with Shein and Temu. We know that. So we'll see where the next couple of years take us. But yeah.
So Jaime, you're trying to look after how tech can help in doing this, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a interesting dichotomy that brands and companies are facing, because there is this, you know, undoubtedly consumer spending is, you know, it's more careful, more conservative. And the feeling that I get when talking to potential partners or people in the industry is that there is a sense of, you know, being more conservative, but at the same time, they're being challenged about, you know, these new players. So they know, and I feel like people know that the way is innovating, but how do they deal with innovation versus preserving their main business model and this kind of like conservative approach to their business model? So it is still a bit challenging, I would say, to introduce technology as a way of opening more channels or opening more revenue opportunities. And it's probably because when we talk about AI specifically, it's probably because it's so early still as well, that it's still, you know, it's still a bit scary, I would say, for many brands, especially larger brands and larger companies that have a bigger risk of introducing a new technology into their model. But I think if you look at from the supply chain point of view, it is an opportunity to optimize and be able to potentially in the future compete with companies that have a competitive advantage on the supply chain front.
All right. So we see two things. It's not only the automotive industry, which has been disrupted, fashion industry as well, right? And maybe what might help us is in rethinking the whole thing. When by today we spoke about democratizing fashion. That's what we strove, but maybe we need to shift in democratizing impact by the help of AI, by the help of tech or something like this. Maybe this helps. So I want to go into kind of more concrete examples given by you, because you're in the center of doing things driven by tech. I have a couple of sheets because I'm basically interested in how and where do you see the biggest areas of value generation with the help of AI in the fashion industry. Yeah, I'm just putting 3 things on here because typically then you can choose in which areas you believe where AI might help in generating more value in the fashion industry. There are 3 sides, which is the first side is, do you see if it helps more on the product creation and the offering side to make better products, to make more sustainable products? That's the one area of value generation. The second area, you might also say maybe it helps better in customer interaction or in customer experiences. Or the third area, which is the execution side, because that means the site execution does not mean project execution. It means deliver what you promise as an offering, deliver what you promise to the clients. Do you have some kind of concrete examples where you, in your daily business, trying to add value by AI, either in 1 or 2 or in all 3 areas? Maybe that helps us to sort out a kind of focusing on generating value by the help of AI in fashion industries. So, Kathy, you want to start?
We just mapped this out ourselves yesterday, and it's interesting. We have very similar headings for generative AI. So the 3 use cases internally for us are 1, I'll start on that side, although I would say the way we've looked at customer interaction and the customer experience, we see that as being more of a 2026 and beyond use case, at least for us internally. And that's when it comes to we want to give customers in future a much richer e-commerce experience. As you've said, Jaime, we don't think that 2D product pages that you scroll through are the future of e-commerce. We think being able to create outfits and being able to see outfits in combination is the future. Much like when you go into store, you can try on different outfits. Whether that outfit is tried on an avatar that looks like you is a debate for a different day. But we do think that generative AI has a really exciting role to play on the content e-commerce side. But we think that the path to getting there is long because it means that we actually have to have 3D renders of our entire assortment, which we're a very, very long way off from having, at least H&M is. But we see a lot of value there. When it comes to the offering, the actual design piece, we have a lot of designers playing around with generative AI. To what extent the tools are actually accelerating their workflow, we think it's way too early for us to tell, but we do see a huge unlock there from an inspiration perspective. Some of the use cases that we see are designers logging into one of the softwares that we use, a company called Raspberry AI. They're based out of New York. They can see things like if you had in your assortment pastel-colored parachute pants, we know they would sell through very well in these specific cities because we can see those keywords and those styles are really trending and selling through really well in those geographies. So we see a big opportunity there. How we measure the actual ROI in terms of our workflow, are designers faster? Are they producing higher profiteering garments? We're too early to tell, but we see a lot of opportunity there. And then the last one, or maybe it's execution is the right word, but the lowest hanging fruit and the easiest entry point for generative AI tools for us is on the market research side, where we use tools like Edited or there's other market research firms. But what generative AI does is it visualizes these trend forecasts in a much more meaningful way. So we can do assortment planning and product planning in a more visual way. So I would say that's for us the lowest entry point and also where there's the greatest number of users internally, because it goes from assortment managers all the way up to strategy and business unit managers. And then, yeah, the designers themselves, ROI, TBD, up to customer interaction, e-commerce experiences. That's how we're thinking about it.
Super. Who of you? Julia?
I'm happy to continue. So definitely for us, the biggest focus is on the customer interaction front. So maybe I'll take a step back here because you talked about the future of fashion. So the dream that we have for the future in fashion is that consumers kind of in terms of how they orientate themselves less on the trend, but really focus on what is right for them. So what helps them express their personality? What is the right color for them that makes them shine? And this is not easy to do. It's actually really hard to deliver on this personalization, but I think that's what's going to make fashion more sustainable. So just to give a personal example, this is something that my stylist chose for me 3 years ago, and I still love it because it's actually a color that suits me. If I would have bought something that an influencer was showing 3 years ago, probably I wouldn't wear it anymore because actually it's not a fit for me. So this is kind of this personalization element that we want to deliver. And how we do it is we have 150 phenomenal human stylists who work with our clients, and they are heavily supported through technology. We would say machine learning, called it AI. And so right now we're really focused on how can we use the new possibilities of generative AI to use the data and information that we get from our customers in an even smarter way, so we can actually deliver better and better selections and outfits for our customers and improve our personalization. And also working on that customer interaction in terms of how we actually talk to our clients. So today, the Outfittery experience is still a pretty static survey that you fill out for us to understand you. So we would ask you questions like, what is your style, or how old do you feel? And what we are now working on turning this into is, and Matt and Natalie from my team are actually working on this. So how can we turn this into a real conversation? Because going back to the personal shopper in New York, that's how we want to interact with our customers, and we want to make you feel heard and understood. So that's one possibility that we're using. And then the other side is actually what Jaime is working on, is super interesting for us. So how can we then visualize the selection that we made on the model or on somebody that looks as similar as possible for you? Again, that also will make our experience better and the whole cycle more sustainable. And then in terms of the offering, we actually have a range of exclusive brands on Outfittery, because we understand our customer really in depth and have developed those brands with our customers, basically. And here we're evaluating also different tools. How can we use the customer data in an even smarter way to design these products? And if anybody here in the room is working on such a solution, I would be very interested to learn more. And then on the execution front, I mean, all of our teams are now looking into how can they use AI to be more effective and to really focus also more on the fun in their work. So for example, our marketing teams are using AI to automate part of the content to make it more personalized, but it's really across the whole range.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Julia said, we're all about visualization, looks, and that's where a lot of my bets are. Kathy, you said 2026 is what you see on customer. Hopefully, I hope we can do it earlier. But for me, that's really how shopping changes, when it becomes more of a game that helps people make better decisions. And we think that one big part of it is visualizing things on yourself. So our goal is really that this becomes more like a Fortnite skin selection experience, more like, you know, looking at the yellow pages. So that's where we place our bets on with Gen AI specifically. But we see a lot more potential as well, and I personally see a lot more potential on the back end things, side of things, where there is also ways to further optimize what's happening behind the scenes and bringing in more players into the supply chain, bringing in more people that can maybe help some of the companies that are struggling with the execution because potentially they don't have the talent to know what's possible within the technology space and the machine learning space. So I think that's probably needed a lot. But yeah, my bets are on customer interaction. I think they both already outlined a lot of that.
Thank you. So we see what kind of power is already in connecting the dots between you three. And if we think further what we should do in a kind of radical collaboration with everyone who's sitting in here, that's the power where we need to go through. And that's how we look into also the traditional industries. So let's go a little bit in David versus Goliath, right? So AI will be one of the biggest opportunities to shake up the fashion industry in the coming years. I think we talked about that, yeah? So give some recommendations. How can startups make sure to build competitive edge when facing fashion giants? What aspects should they pay attention? Is it defensibility? Is it data availability, speed of execution? What's your belief, Kathy?
If I think about the startups where I almost get a bit of anxiety when I hear they're approaching colleagues at H&M, and I feel for them, because with big corporates, what can often happen if you're a founder, and you've probably experienced it, unfortunately, both of you, is that you end up having to talk to a lot of people, you end up kind of doing a lot of work and not getting anywhere, not landing a contract. So my number one advice is to be very, very specific about who your users are and what the value is you're delivering for them. It sounds so simple, but I see it feels like on a daily basis that founders are getting passed around internally, and it's not clear who are you building this for? Who is your end user? And there's a temptation to try and build for too many different types of users internally. So my number one recommendation is be very focused when you're approaching big corporates about who your end user is and what it is that you're enabling them to do differently, ideally better, in their day-to-day workflow. Otherwise, it can be a very frustrating experience, and you're still not going to get any contracts or any revenue off the back of it. So that's my number one advice: be very specific.
Super, and I think
I would like to actually build on that directly.
Cool.
Because with OUTFITTERY, when we started and we said we're going to turn around the way people shop, so we're not going to start from the huge selection, but we're going to start from the customers. A lot of people said, well, that's cute. And maybe that works for like 1,000 customers, but is this really, this is a totally niche product. So is this going to be a scalable solution? Is this going to be used by a lot of people? And actually, kind of over the years, we challenged ourselves, like, do we have to go broader? But I think the reason why we found our moat is really because we were sticking to this proposition and this customer that we had identified. And over the years, actually, all of the big fashion players, I think H&M probably was an exception, but like all the Peek and Kloppenburgs and Zalanos of the world, they copied our model because they saw the value, but they weren't able to execute it because it's really specific. And we spent now over 10 years working on the technology platform and building this moat. And I think that's the strength. And secondly, to add to that, I think it's really important to start kind of working with your customers directly as soon as you can. So in our case, we actually started at the beginning of January and already launched our service in April. It was a completely beta product. So actually the front end looked okay, but in the back end, it was a Google sheet. That was all we had, but it helped us to truly understand this customer and basically develop the proposition together with the customer.
And most probably you faced it as well, how hard it is to narrow it down, to nail it down and focus fully, right?
Yeah, so we're really early stage. I feel like we're, you're both talking to me, and I appreciate that. So I can only agree with you, and that's what we strive for. I would only add one thing that I find particularly interesting, and is that when it comes to speed, I think we as small, 5, 10 people team, 2 people teams, we definitely have an advantage. And also when it comes to risk, we can just, take a bunch of data from the internet to test something and show it to a corporate. And that's probably something they cannot do because it's too risky. There are security issues, there are, copywriting issues, and no one is going to really sue a 2-people team. And if they sue you, probably you're on the right track, honestly. But so yeah, so I would dare to bet on speed as a young team, and show other companies that are more mature, that have more at stake, show them what's possible, and how can you open that up for them, open that opportunity up for them. At least that's what we're doing, or we try to do. Yeah, just being bold on that side. But I definitely agree with what you both said. That's really the pillar of it. Before you start trying anything, you got to know who you're doing it for and why.
Very good. So basically, I think, Alessandro, we are good in time, right? Good. All right. So as far as I was able to see, there was no hand coming up. I'm planning to start something. So is there anything what we can add on here from your side, or you are planning to start something, a company about the opportunities? Yeah, you can do it now. Why not? We are not finished. Yeah, but continue. So
I'm happy to have a go on this one. So I think generally on the fashion market, we talked about how the wallets are compressed, but it's still one of the largest markets globally. So if you start a business now, it's a huge opportunity and you can take market share, right? So I think it still is a fantastic industry to be in. And then in terms of the AI investment, I think it depends on how you measure success. So if I take our example of we want to turn our experience in a conversation, what we will measure is one, conversion. So through having a real dynamic, personalized conversation, can we land more customers? Can we have a higher conversion? But also, can we get more meaningful data points from our customers so that our selection quality in terms of how much wallet share we get actually improves? So we believe that the investment is worth it. We're currently in the process of experimenting with it. But yeah, I think it really depends on your success criteria.
I think the other interesting element with fashion, and going back to what I touched on earlier with Shein and Temu, ultra fast fashion brands, they're in the business of creating new things every single minute of the day. And the conversation that we're having, and also where looks comes in, is how do we create a sense of newness without having to create more stuff? And I think that's where a real huge opportunity is also in this kind of customer interaction space around generative AI. How can you generate outfit combinations, create inspiration without having to do physical photo shoots, which, by the way, are unbelievably expensive? So how can we eliminate physical photo shoots, but still create outfit combinations, give customers that sense of newness without all the waste that comes with what newness usually comes with?
Just to that point and to what has been said already, that we feel that pain, at least when I'm pitching looks to potential partners. When you talk about a consumer-facing experience, it's probably not at the stage where you can just put it on your website or your app for people to actually shop with it. So you're right in that sense, and it's one of the struggles. So the type of partners I would look for are companies that want to test how that would look into their experience and start fitting it in, because this change is happening fast. So at one point it's going to be just unlocked, and if you're not ready for it, the people that are going to have a massive and a hugely different experience than the one that you have. The gap is going to be incredibly great, and I think companies are realizing that, and that's why they want to start those tests and end up with what you described, Kathy, this experience that adds value beyond just shopping more. But I do think that there are more opportunities besides just the consumer facing AI, so to say, or machine learning experiences that deliver return on investment rather quickly. Julia, you talked about marketing, how it can be used there. I think in terms of the inspiration for the designers, you can have a return on investment in the form of reduced time invest into your creative process. I don't know, the designers in the room will have to correct me if I'm wrong, if they have used any Gen AI tools to get inspired or to into their workflows. So I think there are opportunities that are probably more short term when it comes to realizing, your returns on that technology. But it requires a bold step into investing in AI at the end of the day.
Yeah, plus if I can just add one thing, I think it also requires a playful mindset. So what we've experienced is that we're best in these experiments if we take a playful approach, and we sometimes end up with different approaches than we initially thought. So for example, in visualization, we might not start experimenting with the user, like with the customer directly, but showing the visualization to our stylists. And that's how we gain experience. So I think this playful mindset is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, klar.
Talking a lot about the physical goods, but I believe we're in the phase of digitals, and in the next 2 years, we're going to see spatial also for the corporate kids of us, right? Digital clothing for self-expression and much consumer friendly, but also ecologically friendly approach. Could you share maybe a twist of what you were just stating, maybe the time horizon you're looking at ever as a company of when that digital shift is going to arrive in Europe? Define that a little.
Sure. I mean, we've had a brief foray into the phygital through a metaverse experience in 2022, I think it was. Our innovation team launched it. It was just dipping our toe in the water. Of course, we're looking at Gucci and Balenciaga, who with Animal Crossing, and I think there was a statistic that Gucci made over 100 million in like online clothing, like virtual world clothing sales, which I don't know how true that number is, but it definitely made the rounds in the fashion circles, and everyone was like, "Oh my goodness, what are they doing that we're missing out on?" I think the challenge, at least from our perspective, and it's going to be a bit of an unsatisfying answer, is that the reason we haven't made more progress on it is because it ties into brand identity, and we haven't quite figured out yet how the virtual world and how we're present in the virtual world ties into our overall brand identity. I think it takes a lot of nuanced expertise to know how to manage that. Gucci's obviously figured out how to do it, but we haven't yet. But absolutely, I mean, this other, are you guys familiar with Avakin Life? Gamers like The Sims kind of 3.0 with hundreds of millions of users and brands selling garments on there, also making a very decent profit. Unbelievable. So yeah, we're paying attention. I think the challenge is, do you basically copy your assortment and bring it into the virtual world, or do you design specifically for the virtual world? And back to brand strategy, that's something you kind of top down need to define a strategy for, and it's so new. We're just not there yet.
Quick, also building upon that question, that for me would have been the business case. So using the 3D rendered assets more effectively, not just for the digital goods, but the consumer experience, but giving them a new way to engage with the products online. And I'm really thinking like corporate kids. How many of you actually spent a call virtually the past 2 days? Probably all of us, right? How many of you actually put on like a filter? And when we started importing some of our apps from the dematerialized assets, people have fun with it. And there's this new engagement even for work life with your work colleagues. So that's where I was going with that. That would have elevated a whole new revenue stream and made it more, I think, sustainable for at least the larger results. Maybe you could also add from OUTFITTERY's perspective, because you have such a cool niche client segment.
So we haven't really experimented with that space so far. The way we see the future in that sense is that our mission really is to understand our customers and really help them understand who they want to be and what they want to express. And that will be the basis also to help you express yourself in the virtual world. But how exactly our service will look there is still not defined. But it starts from really understanding you and understanding your identity and who you want to be in this world.
Maybe I can add something from our experience when we're looking at starting looks. We, of course, looked at digital assets and phygital assets. And the challenge that I saw as a potential entrepreneur in that field was a platform question. Like, what are we putting our items in? Is it Roblox? Is it Zoom? Is it, is that something that can be passed on from one platform to the other without having to buy a new one, without it losing value? And I think this was relevant when all of the NFT hype was on. I think it was one of the biggest questions, and I think it's still an open question. So I think for someone that would like to start something in that space, I don't know if it's about solving that question, finding a way around it, or maybe it's just one platform that's going to be king or queen.
So thanks for challenging that. Maybe we take yours to the next round of questions, but I'm pretty happy that you challenge it, because what we have learned is, you said at the end of the day, it's a business. If it has no impact on the balance sheet, we might not do it, right? Then we had a kind of thing, if it's, don't stop playing, right? If it's not joy, no one ever will join on this mission. And then we need to be aware that physical, digital, both is real for people, right? And we should see the opportunities in that area as well. So maybe we jump quickly to the next point before we open up this questions is, if someone is about to start a company in fashion and AI, are there any kind of, what kind of opportunities do you see? What kind of recommendations can you give? Who wants to shoot out?
Well, maybe I could start thinking of how I would do it differently if I were to start again. And I think I would double down on the point of speed and risk taking. I think that showing something as soon as possible to your user, but also to, depending on who your client is at the end of the day, if it is a company, showing them something, what's possible very fast. And I think that would be the first thing that I would try. And also, what is the craziest thing that you can do that no one else will actually do? And with AI, I think you have a lot of potential to do crazy things that no one else dares to do, even controversial things, even things that challenge, what we're used to. And I think fashion generally, we've had a lot of progress tech-wise, but I would dare to say that it's a lot on the transactional front, like how our website's faster, payments, and so forth. But what about, the actual design, the actual items? I think a very cool example could be how people, when Midjourney started, they started creating collections of, I don't know, Nike meets Balenciaga. Of course, that would have never happened, or maybe not as fast as people imagined it, or it's opening a door that maybe some other people are scared to open. So yeah.
Yeah, from my side, I think Jaime gave the perfect answer. I have nothing to add.
Slightly different. I mean, we've talked a lot about e-commerce, and obviously that's also where we are seeing probably a lot of AI adoption already. But actually, one of the areas we spent a lot of time on as a team recently is how can we rethink the store experience? And we have thousands of stores around the world. And what was, apropos being new to fashion, what I didn't realize is that there's visual merchandising teams and merchandising teams, and they don't necessarily listen to each other. So the people who are designing what goes where in the store get instruction, usually in the form of an email or a PDF document, and then they may or may not listen. And what actually happens in store is a black box. And it's mind-boggling to me that we know every click and every hover on a website, but people come into the store, they do stuff, and then they may or may not buy. So the retail industry is on a journey to adopt passive RFID ceiling readers, which if you've been at Decathlon or Uniqlo and you've used one of those self-checkout baskets, it's basically putting that technology into the ceiling, which means you can actually track movements, and you can do crazy things like A/B testing where to put stuff in store and getting real-time feedback on how that's driving sell-through or foot traffic through the store. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to capitalize on that development in hardware, being the passive RFID ceiling readers, which have now come down in cost enough that you can actually equip a store with them. And then do analytics on, hey, what if we put this blazer next to the purple scarves in the front of the store? Or if we put them on the mannequin in this specific store in Hamburg versus Berlin, how is that going to drive sell-through? So doing analytics and testing with store merchandising, visual merchandising. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and not a lot of people building in that space because it's the confluence of emerging technologies that have only come about in the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years. So I'm really excited about that. It's a bit, it's not as sexy. It's store, it's physical retail, yawn. But, it's a big part of how people shop. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, that's wonderful, because that maybe gives us or shows us opportunities when we look into physical spaces, right? Where we are, what we see, where we are doing a lot on the analytical AI side, right? But where is the generative AI side? How can we add it? We discussed it earlier about this. Why is that so much missing? Taking the insights and generate something out of it by the help of technology. I think it's exactly where you're dreaming of, what kind of experience, that we could create in the future, which leads me to the last question, a bit beyond the obvious, right? You touched it a little bit already. I would be interested in getting an answer from each of you on a kind of which experience can we create that no one will be able to live without in 5 years? Julia.
For me, it's the intelligent wardrobe. So our dream is to actually be able to know everything that's in your wardrobe, know what's through RFID, know what's in your washing machine right now, what is available basically. And then every single morning to be able to make a recommendation based on your calendar, your plans for the day, the weather in Berlin. What are 3 outfit recommendations that you could use today? So we get rid of this moment where we stand in front of our closet in the morning and it's full, but we still don't know what to wear.
I agree with you. I share that dream. I wish it for myself and for all Lux customers. And I would add that I would find it, I hope that in the future we think, how were we able to shop without seeing whether it would look good or whether it would fit us? How were we so blind on the store experience that we had no idea? We were just making these risks of ordering something and then returning it. I feel like that's something that, it's getting old. And I could see ourselves questioning how we were able to shop without that, and also without seeing what's on our wardrobe, seeing things next to what we have already, to really make a good decision, because I make a lot of bad decisions when I shop. I don't know about you. And I think that could be better.
What I like about what you just said is that we've talked internally a lot about this concept of the cost per wear and educating customers around really thinking around, well, if you're buying an item, how much is it costing you on a per wear basis? And then all of a sudden, super cheap garments aren't actually that cheap anymore because you just wear them once. So I think that's really exciting from a wardrobing perspective, that you can track these things.
That's cool. So there's many opportunities. We just need to discover it. There was a question from you, right? I will give you the mic.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, I'm Ulrike. I'm from the startup Valupa, and we come more from the production side. So what we do, we develop sustainable supplies for the fashion industry. And what we do, we use 3D printing in terms of making the whole supply chain very short. But at the same time, also always have in our minds, how we can also keep the production close to us. We try to produce in Germany as well. And what I always think when it comes to AI, I wonder, so how can these words of the customer and having a positive impact from AI also connect with that production? Because obviously it has the opportunity to make the production much more sustainable. And I think this is a very, to me, that's a very important perspective. And I mean, how do you see maybe the future in that?
Yeah, 3D printing, obviously super exciting as a way to reduce waste because you're only producing something in a certain colorway or in a certain print if the customer has already signaled that they're willing to buy it. There's a really cool company based in the US called Resonance, who are vertically integrated. So they've built their own factory in the Dominican Republic, and they're essentially a launch pad for brands. So if anyone in this room wants to start a brand, you can approach Resonance companies and you can say, I want to be able to launch kaftan or silk dresses and give customers the opportunity to choose. We think there's a lot of potential there. I think with 3D printing, one of the challenges, and we've made a few investments in this space that are aiming to tackle that, is that the print doesn't actually penetrate the fabric in many cases. And so it's like surface level printing, which doesn't look great from a quality perspective. So I think there's a technical challenge there, which needs to be solved in order for this to be really more adopted en masse. And then the other difficulty, which Jan is a little bit boring and a bit technical, but scaling that to a retailer like us with over 3,000 stores globally is really difficult to do. There's a reason we have year-long purchasing cycles, because then we purchase units in the hundreds of thousands or even millions and distribute/allocate them to these thousands of stores. How do you allocate when you only do that? When, let's say you have a customer buying from you in Portugal and then a customer buying from you in Poland. The factory, the printing is, I don't know, somewhere in Europe, say it is in Portugal. From a fulfillment perspective, it's actually really difficult to execute that. So that's the problem we've always had with on-demand and print on-demand, is that it doesn't scale the way we need it to scale. Yeah.
For us, it's interesting to see, okay, we are already working in virtual reality, kind of, designing our products. But, how can AI make that shift, maybe possible? So I think that's maybe, to me, an interesting question.
Maybe an idea that comes to mind, not an expert on this field, but is about the input of the data that you take in to make the decisions that you're making about what are you gonna produce, how are you gonna produce it, and the materials that you're using. I think we're at very, very interesting times with the eco design regulation that might be, worked in and continue to be worked on and potentially pass. I don't know. That would, basically force anyone producing anything or selling anything in the EU to label it with, towards circularity. How is this product, in the same way that we see labels on refrigerators of how efficient they are, will potentially be seeing how circular these products are. And in that case, that data potentially will infuse the decisions that you will take into what materials to use and how to produce it. And so I would see the potential for AI into a mix of what the consumers are buying, potentially based on that, so that you can decide what to produce. Maybe that's something that you're doing. Maybe we don't have enough data to use AI on that, and you'll see it right away on your Excel sheet. But I don't know, just an idea of where it could go.
Okay, there's one more.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Masha, the co-owner of the branding studio. We work a lot with brand founders and brand teams, and in a very close collaboration. So my question to you, would you use generative AI to create your brand identity? If yes, why? If no, why?
Yes, absolutely. So as I said, we have a range of exclusive brands, and we're also working on the brand identity for those brands. And I think what's really interesting about generative AI is to feed the AI with all the depth of customer data that we have. This would not be possible, like if on the other hand side, I have a human creative only working on that. It's just not possible to take all this data into account. So for me, this is a really super interesting inspiration. And again, here we personally really believe in the combination of the AI and the human creative. So for us, this is a way of inspiring us. But I could also imagine to just have an experiment and let the AI have a take on the brand identity alone.
All right. Thank you. So I think we are on time. It's time to have a coffee and eat a croissant or something like this. So to summarize the whole thing, we see that no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. That's the reason why we meet at these physical spaces, that we meet outside there. So my recommendation is speak with each other and don't talk to each other. Just connect, because that's what we need to do. And I'm really happy that you challenge the whole thing, for your wonderful contribution into the things, what you do, and looking into the kind of futures, bright futures, brighter futures, desirable futures. There is a lot of opportunities outside there. And I appreciate it a lot being together with all of you. And I would say a big applause to our 3 panelists. And thank you for being with us. Have the time with the coffee, talk, and have fun, because it should be joy. Thank you very much.